welcome back to NRM 638, Python Scripting for ArcGIS Applications, Spring Semester 2015. This is an e-learning class at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. In this session, we're going to work with the functions that are available in the Python add-ins module. And those functions are documented in ArcGIS Help. And it says the module can only be used within a Python add-in. It cannot be used in a geoprocessing script tool. However, we can test drive these functions in the Python window in ArcMap. So for example, let's go to message box. There's 6 types of message boxes. So let's say, for example, we want to try to create a message box number 6. We could do that in the Python window in ArcMap. So if I type in Python add-ins dot, I don't have a list. I'll have to import Python add-ins to start. Okay, so I import the module, and then I'll have all the functions available to that module. So one function is message box. So message box, we would issue a message, whatever you want it to be, and then the title of your message box. So we're going to use style number 6. And then the type, so message box 6 type. So then if we enter, we'll see what message box type 6 looks like. So here's message box type 6, where we have button cancel, try again, or continue. Our message is in this part of the dialog, and our title is right up here. So we control the message text, we control the title, and then we control the type of the message box with the final parameter. And it returns the text continue because that's what we entered. So if we press the up arrow key, this time we'll enter cancel. So cancel is the text that's returned. Okay, another function that we can use is either open dialog or save dialog, and that will allow you to open GIS data or save to GIS data. So let's try open dialog. And then everything is optional because in the help, title is enclosed in a curly brace. So that's the first optional parameter. So I'll just put select GIS data source. And then we could say multiple selection, true or false, give a starting location for a geodatabase or a folder, a caption for our button, a filter label, etc. So let's just try select GIS data source. And then basically you get this dialog, and we could select, for example, tallpixels.shape, and that is what's returned by the function, that string, including the source. Okay, you can also use the function save dialog, where you would enter the dialog's title, the dataset name that is going to be the default, and then the starting location. So that's the path to where the dataset will be saved. So we go to our Python window, and this will be our title, save your work. The default for the user will be testpoly.shp. And then the path will be c/temp as a raw string. And then if we hit enter, we get save your work, and then the default, and we could change that. So let's call it test.shp, and then save, and then that's the string that's returned. So it'll be a new shapefile at c/test. Okay, another function is get selected table contents layer or data frame. Returns a selected layer or data frame from the table of contents. So let's make a couple data frames and a couple layers in our data frames. Okay, so a selected data frame would be one that is selected like that. So now let's run our Python window. So the function python add-ins dot get selected table contents layer or data frame. And then that returns the selected frame. So that's an object. So if we put in a dot, you could return any of the properties of that selected data frame. So for example, what's the name of this selected data frame? What's the display units of this data frame? And we could do the same thing with layers. So we select a layer and then run the function, and then selected layer dot will return all the properties of this layer. So what's the data source of this layer? And what is it a feature layer? What is a feature layer? Okay, and the other function we can use is GP Tool Dialog. And that will allow you access to any geoprocessing tool or any script tool that you've created. So basically it's the function, the toolbox location, and then the toolbox name. So for example, I have a custom toolbox that I created, and I have my script tool random vectors. So I could run that script tool. So I'll input my points, and then what do I want my random vector line distance to be? So let's say 1,000 meters. And then we'll output it to C test, and we'll call it random vectors, and then execute. So that creates my random vectors. We could do the same thing using the Python add-in module. So the first parameter we need is the toolbox location. So that's the path to the toolbox. So if we go to our catalog window, here's our custom toolbox, and then go to properties. Here is the location. So we need to copy that location, and we'll put that in our script. So it's going to be a raw string, and then path. And then the second thing is, what is the name of the tool? So the name of the tool, if we look at the properties of this tool, it is simply called script 7 here. So we'll copy that, and then we'll paste that in our window as text. So then when this function executes, it'll look at this path, look inside the TBX, and then find a tool that has an internal name script 7. And then we could execute this tool. Okay, how about if we want to use this function and execute a system tool? So for example, the geoprocessing tool add XY. Well, what we could do is we'll copy that geoprocessing tool to our custom toolbox, and that way we'll have a simple path to that tool. So first we'll find it. So add XY, here's the toolboxes. So copy it, and then we'll paste it in our own personal toolbox. So right mouse click on our custom toolbox and paste. So now we have this tool in our custom toolbox. So the path is going to be the same. So the path will be the same as before, but now the name of this tool will be add XY. So we'll copy that, and then press the up arrow key, and then instead of running script 7, we'll run that add XY tool that's in our custom toolbox. And then if I hit enter, then we have access to that geoprocessing tool. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll build a Python add-in that will have 2 buttons. One button will run our random vectors custom script tool, and the second button will run the add XY geoprocessing tool. So we use the shortcut to our add-in assistant and then browse to a new folder. And we enter the property or project settings for our add-in. So I put a description, toolbar containing 2 geoprocessing tools, create random vectors, add XY to point attribute table. And then we go to our add-in contents tab, we'll add a new toolbar. And then I'll give this toolbar a descriptive caption. And then we'll add a button to this toolbar, and then we'll add our second button to this toolbar. So our first button will be to create random vectors. And then I named the caption create random vectors, and my class name will be random vectors, and my ID name will be ran vectors. And then a tooltip, create random vectors, and a message. And the message will be create random vectors originating from each point location. And then our second button, so I named the caption add XY, and the class name will be add XY, the ID add XY, and then a tooltip, add XY to point table, and then the message adds point X, point Y fields to attribute table. So then we'll save our work, and then we'll folder, and then add the script code for these two buttons. And then we're simply going to have for each on click run the GP Tool Dialog. And for both our tools, they're located in the same toolbox. So we can add that for both our tools. And then the name of our add XY tool, we can copy and then paste add XY for this class add XY. And then the name for our tool that will create random vectors, we'll copy. Then we'll save our work and check for any syntax errors. And then we'll run this after we build our add-in. So exit out of ArcMap, and then we'll build our add-in. So make our add-in, and then install our add-in. And then we could test drive these two tools that are now going to be Python add-in buttons in ArcMap. Okay, so I went to Customize Add-in Manager, and here under my add-ins, here's the Python add-in, and it has a toolbar, and the label of that toolbar is Point Layer Tools. So we'll turn on Point Layer Tools. So now we've got two buttons, create random vectors with a tooltip, create random vectors, and a message, create random vectors originating from each point location. And then our second tool is add XY to point table. So let's add some points to our table of contents. So we have 3 points. So we'll run this first tool that will execute our custom script tool, create random vectors. So then input our points layer and then the length of our random vector. So let me say 500 meters, and then I'll put this to default geodatabase, and I'll call it random vectors. So then we get our 3 random vectors. And then the second tool will be add XY. So our input features are our river locations. And then that adds the XY coordinate to each of the 3 points. Okay, so if you go to the Blackboard website, this was our last video session for this week. So the assignment this week will be with Python add-ins.